Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today, Real Communication, Real Results, the art of adding value with people. And we have the honor and pleasure to have Dr. Matt Townsend with us today. Please note this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending this recording out today following the webinar. So if you know someone in your market center that you'd like to share this info with, please send them the link. Please type any questions you have for Dr. Matt Townsend into the questions box, and I may post some things in the chat box, so keep an eye on that as well. And then following the webinar, if you have any questions, you can email us at fasttrack@kw.com. And that's all for me, so Matt, you can take it away.
Paige, thank you so much. Thank you. You're the best. Hey, everybody, so good to be with you all and to be able to have a chance to talk about something I love more than anything. I just barely got back from a family reunion where I had the great chance to present with Diana on this very issue. So I'm using my slides from then. So if any of you had seen me there, I actually I didn't get as far as I wanted to in my presentation with Diana because I started telling a story about puffy pants. And if you're really good and you go to my and you take my group coaching class, I promise I will tell my puffy pants story so that you'll get a firsthand shot at it. It's a crazy true story about communications and the real experience that I had with my wife. But I'm honored to be with you. I love Keller Williams. I love what you're doing, and I really love working with real estate agents. Again, my background, just so you know a little bit about me, I have a PhD in human and organizational systems. I have 2 master's degrees. One is in conflict resolution, one is in human development. And I spend a lot of my time just working with people on relationships, whether it's corporations doing training or whether it's working with couples or mediating big discussions with corporations. I just love communication, and more importantly, I love people. I also spent about 7+ years working with a company called Franklin Covey Company, where I worked with Dr. Stephen Covey and did a lot of writing and researching for them. I was also a consultant. I traveled the country. I taught one of their biggest Train the Trainer programs, and I got really good at the 7 habits of highly effective people. I actually ended up helping to write the 7 habits of highly effective families. I was a writer on that. I was also a writer on the 7 habits of highly effective teens. And so a lot of this content comes from my many years of corporate experience, but also it comes from the fact that people they're hard. And you may have noticed that. How many of you have noticed that, man, life would be so much easier with your teams and your relationships if there just weren't other people around? Because people are complicated, people are difficult, and some obviously are more difficult than others. And so one of the things that I wanted to figure out, especially I've learned it just working with so many companies, that it's hard. It is really hard to know that your job is about people when people can exhaust you as much as they can. And also the hard part is next year, you got to do it all again. And the next year after that, you got to do it all again. So I used to hear a lot from my clients that were like, I can't keep up this pace. I can't keep giving this level of service and attentiveness and keep my training going and keep my learning and growing. And I can't do it all. And, but the problem is you feel like all your competitors can. So that's where I really came up with this idea of the art of adding value with people, because I know you're doing as much as you can do. You're balancing your family, your friends, you're balancing your time with your coworkers. You're doing everything you can possibly do. And so you can't just do more. So we've got to find a way to do better, to do the right things and do them in the right way and do them in the right way at the right time with the right people. And I found if we can do all of that, then we can actually start getting what I call real results, and we can add value to the people that we're with. We remember people that add value. So in fact, think about it. Think of somebody in your life that really was a person that added a lot of value to your existence. They made you feel better about yourself. They made you get better results. They actually took you to another level. That's what I'm trying to create in this program, Real Communication, Real Results. It's a group coaching program taught through MAPS. So you just go to the MAPS page, find group coaching, and then look for Real Communication, Real Results. It's a 4-week program where we spend an hour every week, and I'm going to walk through some of the content. We're going to try to show you where you can actually get this power to do more with less. And the way we do more with less is we do more by adding more value with the people we're currently working with. We have to add and strengthen the relationship with the people around us. And I promise when we do, they're going to come back to you. These are the people that are going to refer people to you, not just because you helped them get a house, right? But any agent might be able to help them get the house. But what you did is you actually connected with them at a deeper level. You were more closely aligned to them because you understood them in a way that others hadn't understood them, because you actually cared and could show you care. You actually adapted and changed and learned, and you became better with them, and they recognized that they became better with you. So let's get into it, and let's start showing you how we actually make this happen. One of the first things I teach in the program is this idea that we've got to kind of blow up where the real source of value is coming from. A lot of people, I mean, especially when you're into like the kind of motivational world, you'll hear a lot of motivational speakers that'll tell you that you are the king, you're in charge, you're the difference maker, you're the one. And I just want to say phooey, right? I don't want you to think that the power is just all in you. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm going against the protocol of so many other people. And I also don't want you to think that the power is only in the other person you're trying to influence, whether it's your mom, your friend, or your coworker, your teammates, your clients, your team leader, your fellow agents. I want you to think of the power, the real source of adding value is not in me, and it's not in someone else. It's actually in this really interesting space that I call the space between. And you can see in this slide, there's a race. And by the way, we had to change my slide because I didn't own the really cool picture that I had. But the slide was a picture of the pursuit race. If you've ever seen the Summer Olympics, there is a race called the pursuit race. And in the race, they actually they wear those, they're on bicycles, and they wear those aerodynamic helmets, they wear the spandex, and their job is to ride their bike on a velodrome, an oval that's banked, and they ride their bike as fast as they can to get the fastest scores they can. And this is where I learned just very distinctly about the value of what happens in the space between people. And the value is very simply this. In the Sydney Olympics in 2000, the world record for the pursuit of one-man pursuit race, which is a 4-kilometer race, so one man on one bicycle, was 4 minutes and 18 seconds. That guy did 4 kilometers in 4 minutes and 18 seconds, which was phenomenal, right? World record pace, killed it. But that exact same day, they had a men's team race, which is 2 cyclists. And on the team race, the 2 cyclists actually rode the exact same amount of time, but they shaved about almost 19 seconds off of the world record time individually. They're faster as a team. And you would think that that doesn't make sense, right? Because we're bicyclists. Everyone still has to go as fast as they can go. But the reality is something happens to us when we are on a team. And in aerodynamics, when you're riding bicycles, what happens is it's called drafting. Drafting is where the first bicycle actually has to break that big wall of air and wind, and they have to break through the bubble. And then if the second cyclist can get close enough to the first cyclist, heading in the exact same direction, then they can actually create something really valuable. And what happens is in that bubble of air, something happens between the cyclists. The first cyclist actually creates a vacuum in the bubble of air, and the second cyclist creates a little push of air. And the vacuum from the first to the second and the push from the second to the first actually starts to make the cyclist more efficient. The cycle runs faster. And interestingly, it's not because of the first cyclist, and it's not because of the second cyclist. It's what's happening between the two cyclists. And we call it in physics, right, drafting. It's a theory of aerodynamics, but it's a very real principle. It's called an emergent property, is what we call it. And an emergent property is something that doesn't exist inside of you, and it doesn't exist inside of me. It exists inside of when we get together. It's what happens between us. Something emerges. And I want to show you through this program how we're going to go about creating an emergent property of more value with the people you're connecting to. And it seems like, you know, wow, pie in the sky, that would be so great. But you've already experienced it, right? One of the definitions of this concept is called synergy. And synergy was not coined by Stephen Covey. It was coined by Aristotle, who said the whole is greater than the sum of its individual parts. Synergy is what you can do. So think about a transaction, a negotiation you've had for a house that went so superbly well. You worked really well with the other agent. You worked really well with your clients, that it really produced an outcome that was incredible. That, my friends, is synergy. And that is what I want you to learn to master. The ability to walk in with any human being using the principles and actually create a higher value equation or product with each other. That's what we're about here. And so I want you to think about the one person in your life that you know could do that really well. Who was amazing at that? And what was it that was so special about that person? Why could they do it? And I'm going to bet that whatever happened with that person that stands out as a really synergistic kind of hero for you, I'm going to bet that person had some serious power with you in the space between. You know, sometimes that could just be in watching their movie, or that could be in, you know, taking a course that they took. I feel that way when I'm with Diana Kokoska, just because of the synergy and the power she creates and the caring that she has for me when we do something together. So think about it, and I want you to start to identify it, because this synergy is not something that's just, you know, fake. It's not something like a technique you're going to do to somebody. It's actually, the synergy is something that occurs in nature every single day. In nature, for example, in Utah, there's an aspen grove that is like 100 acres squared of aspen trees. And all of these aspen trees all have grown one big root ball. And it happens to be like one of the biggest, largest living organisms on the earth. It is a root ball of aspen trees that is 100 acres by 100 acres. Huge, enormous living, breeding thing. And it is something that is to be beholden. Now watch though, as a system, it's very scary, because you could introduce something into one part of the system and it actually could effectively kill the whole system if we're not careful in the space between. And so one of the things that I want to show you is some of the principles, some of the things that we've got to make sure we're doing with people. And whether you take the in-depth coaching program or not, you're going to learn something today, I think, that will add a ton of value to you. So let me give you some examples of adding value. To me, if we're going to talk about the math of adding value, this is what the equation looks like. Me plus you equals 5. That's what I would love this webinar to be for all of us, that you and I together create something so much more out of this, right? Now, another equation is this: you and another person equal a -5. One is called value add. The other is called value minus. Value add is where the two of us add more together. But you with the exact same person could actually also get value minus too. Have you ever had a client like that? That you had a great moment with them, but a half hour later you're having a hard moment, and a half hour later a great moment, and a half hour later you want to tear each other up. That's called value minus. And I see that every day. None of us got into our marriages hoping for value minus, but it happens because some people struggle in making things actually effectively work in the space. Now, another equation that we could talk about is this: 1 + 1 = 2. Many of us are really happy just breaking even. We're just totally pleased as punch if we can just break even, right? And so if we could make it and break even, we might not ever go for value add. Why would I ever try to go for value add if I could just break even? And I honestly believe that that is one of the biggest impediments to you as an agent becoming really effective. Because if 1 + 1 = 2, and it should equal 2, then you might settle for it, because you can consistently get 2 with another person. You might be such a great agent that you can get 1 + 1 = 2. You don't get 1 + 1 = -5. You're so good, you get ahead. But the problem is you think you're getting ahead, but you're really breaking even. We really need to get the synergy of 1 + 1 = 5, simply because tomorrow you need to do it again. You need value add because it's going to get harder tomorrow, and you can't just keep working harder. At some point, you need synergy, right? Some of us don't even have the skills, though, to make us break even with people. Instead, we always end up just compromising. We end up giving in. We end up saying yes to people we don't want to say yes to. We end up doing things we didn't really want to do. We end up in careers we didn't even want to have. I know people and coach people that they're a really awesome agent, and people want them to go be a manager or a team lead, and they don't want to, but they also want, to grow. They want more money, they want more opportunity, but they really just love what they're doing. But I've seen them actually take those jobs, and then it ends up not working, and they feel like they've lost a little bit of something. So some of us get through life not creating synergy and value add. We get through life by just learning to compromise. And so we only lose a little bit every day. But if we are constantly losing a little bit, we're eventually going to wear out. So one of the things I want us to focus on is, where is all of this extra value coming from? From a positive 3 points to a negative 3 points to breaking even to losing a little bit. The value is not coming from you, and it's not coming from me. It's coming from what happens between us. We have to pay attention to the plus sign. And in this program, and in my group coaching program, I focus on the relationship. Did you know that every single one of your relationships has a value? It's either a value add, it's a value minus, it's a break even, or it's a compromise. But your relationships have distinct values, modifiers, multipliers, or dividers. And you, as an agent who's already really adept and really skilled at making things happen with people, you must master the ability to make the plus sign more and more valuable every day. That, by the way, is what is value add. Okay, so our goal then is to make sure we focus on the principles that can guarantee value add. I can't always make sure the people can, but I know that the principles that we live with people will create and increase the likelihood of getting more with other human beings. If you notice, the Red Cross uses the plus sign because it is a sign of saving, right? Of healing, of health. And so what I want us all to be focusing on is not just your client and not just you, but in fact, go home and start focusing more on the relationship between you and the other people. One of the problems with it is we don't tend to focus on relationships as much until they're dying. When I would work with couples a lot and just sit with them as they're struggling or thinking of divorce, most people don't even pay attention to the relationship as much until it starts going bad. We actually just take it for granted if it's healthy. It's like our health, right? We take our health for granted until we start to lose it. But there's something really valuable that we have to get into. One of my favorite quotes is this quote by Noah Ben Shea. He says, "It's the silence between the notes that makes the music. It's the space between the bars that holds the tiger in. If you go to the zoo and there's a tiger there, and and you go to the tiger exhibit, right? And in the exhibit, they have bars in the exhibit, but the bars are like 5 feet away from each other. They're all separated by 5 feet of space. You're not very safe. So I'd get out of there. You're not going to create a safe space with somebody if the bars aren't spaced appropriately. It's not the notes that makes music. It's how people space the notes. It's the timing of the notes. It's the right notes at the right time in the right space that creates the harmony in the music. So we need to pay attention to this thing that most of us don't even notice in our lives. So there's 4 basic principles I teach through my program, and in the group coaching. And in the group coaching, I pretty much take one specific day on each of these 4 areas. So let's run through them. The first principle that we must possess in the space with other people is character. Character fosters mutual trust. Character means you can believe in me. Character means that you recognize that I am a person that will act. If you notice in the word character is the word act. You will notice that I will act in your behalf. I will act aligned with my values and my principles. When we work with somebody, if I have an agent that is an agent that possesses character, then I sense that I can trust them, because I didn't sense that you were in this for your pay. I sense that you are in this because it matches your values. Character is one of the most powerful forms of influence that exists on the earth, because as soon as I start to exercise a life with character, then that character starts to drive me to higher and higher principles. Character fosters trust. And in the space with other people, you have got to trust each other. And again, I didn't invent the idea, that the principle is character. And what we're looking for is this capacity building understanding that if I can build more trust, then I have more power with people. Think about it. Think of somebody you don't trust, but that you have to work with. How do you work with somebody that you don't trust? How do you communicate with somebody you don't trust? How do you negotiate with somebody that you don't trust? So character is the principle, but trust is the thing that actually produces that extra value, that extra power in the space with somebody else. And trust, you generally only know you have trust when you feel it. Trust, by the way, you're going to notice a lot of these have to be generated and measured by the feeling. So we could go get metrics for you, but think about it. Are you an agent that people trust? Are you an agent that leads with character? Meaning, if you could get more money from somebody without exercising full character, would you do it? Or are you impeccable in your character? When you go to certain events, when you go hang out with all of your agents, at an event, do you show character? Do you make sure that you don't talk behind people's backs? Do you ooze? And I'm not saying you got to be Mother Teresa. I'm just saying that if you don't have character, people know it. And if people think you don't have character, they're probably not going to trust you as much, especially when you might be incredibly competent. So I teach that there's 2 things that build trust in somebody. It's character and it's competency. It's not enough to be the person in the room with the most integrity. You've also got to know how to do your job, and you got to do it really well. But when you do both of those things, boom, you've built a pretty powerful trust that is in the space between you and others. Once you have the character, you can cooperate. Once you have the character, you can communicate. Once you have the character, you can change, and you will change. So let's go through each of these. The character facilitates communication. Character means I now have the ability to try to listen to you and understand what you're trying to say to me. Have you ever noticed how much character it takes to listen to your clients as they're telling you something that they want, and in your head you're like, it's not even reasonable. Your house is not worth what you think it's worth. Be quiet, shut your cake hole. It's not worth it. And you can just go off on them. But instead, I'm going to show you in this program how to actually communicate with them in a way that you enable or turn on mutual understanding. You want to actually not only just understand them, but you're going to need to get them to understand you. And so we need our understanding of other people to help us know how to communicate better to them. So I'm going to show you how to actually listen in a way, I call it real communication, where you're going to recognize the emotion. Real is an acronym that stands for recognizing their emotion, because all emotion is telling you something. When someone walks in a house and they go quiet, that's telling you something, right? So I want you to recognize it. Oh, she's having emotion. Then I want you to explore the story behind it. That's the E in Get Real. Explore it. Man, Stacy, you sure went quiet when you walked in here. What are you feeling? And then listen to her story. And inside of her story, you're going to hear if she's feeling fed or if she's feeling starved by this event. And you're going to start to be able to adapt whether she's positive or negative about her feeling. And then we teach you that so it's exercise, it's recognize the emotion, explore the story, attend to where they're starving, and lift the conversation. And I'm going to show you this really cool rule that's basically, I call it the 90-10 or the 80-20 rule. It comes from the Pareto rule, but I believe 90% of what you're discussing with somebody, even if you're in conflict, 90% of what you're talking about, you probably agree on. It's crazy, and if you probably don't believe me, but I've sat down with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in high conflict mediations, and 90% of the time, when you line it out, they actually agree on, or 100% of the time, they agree on 90% of the same stuff. So we're really only fighting about the 10%. And I'm going to show you how you can actually use that knowledge to show the people around you that you know what you're doing and that you can get a better result with them. It's pretty powerful. And once we can communicate and I understand you, then I can actually start cooperating with you. I can start getting your benefit for you and my benefit for me. Because I have the ability to communicate so well, I can now share what I need. And I can do it in a way that I don't feel like I have to lose something. Some people are so afraid to tell you what they think. Have you met these people? And some people aren't afraid enough. They need to be a lot more scared, but they won't. They're not. So what I teach you in the program is how to learn to cooperate based on the communication and understanding you've created. And then we start pursuing mutual benefit. If we want the space to be ripe and rich for each other, I can't just give up all my margin on you for you all the time. I've got to cooperate, and meaning I need my benefit out of this deal, and I'm going to fight like a dog to get you yours. It's the most powerful thing you'll ever see. So that's called cooperation, right? And what I teach is we exercise character that builds trust. With our trust, we communicate and show understanding. We learn more about the person, and then we start cooperating to create something powerful together. And by doing those three, eventually you might also be forced at times to have to change your opinion, to change your position, to change your price on a home. And the change is going to be a byproduct of you understanding, trusting, and understanding and benefiting. And you're going to use your character to make that change. Change fosters more trust. When people see that we can understand their point of view and that we can change, people want to follow those people. Think about it. The people that you know that are really amazing, they're not always amazing. They're the ones that can ask for forgiveness because they've blown it. They're the ones that have made mistakes. They're the ones that need help. They're the ones that, maybe at times just didn't know how to do something. But when they blew it, they exercise character and they come back with character and they fix it. And they communicate to understand how they hurt you. And they then cooperate with you to make it better, and they change. So those are the 4 principles we're going to teach you. And in the coaching program, we're going to go through each one of them for 1 hour straight. And I'm going to give you tons of skills and tools about how to do it. It's called the space between, right? Now, another really fast lesson that I teach, and it'll be a big part of this entire program, is getting down to the real needs of others. I teach an interesting theory about the fact that so many of us spend too much time fighting with other people in the smoke, but we never get down to the real fire. So I use a metaphor called smoke and fire, and it's the fastest thing you'll ever do in your negotiations. If you've ever sat with somebody and they keep talking and telling you stuff, and they're fighting about something that just sounds so stupid to you, like, why are you making such a big deal about that little tiny crack in the formica in the bathroom? But behind that little tiny crack, there's a fire. There's a bigger story. And what I teach is if we can learn to cut through the smoke and get down to the fire, you're going to make this so much more effective for you. And you're going to actually be able to meet their needs more quickly. So think about your office, for example. How many times have you heard agents and teams arguing about turf wars, or deadlines that weren't met, or promotions that didn't work, or just the different personalities that we're struggling with, or the change that didn't happen, or goals that keep changing? These are all very common issues, aren't they? And what I teach is they're never the real issue. The number one thing couples fight about when they're divorcing and struggling, the number one topic they fight about is money. The second topic is probably like sex or kids. And you want to bet that none of those issues are the real issues, but that's where they fight, because that's where the pain is. So what I teach is whenever you see pain, and in a minute I'll show you how you know you've got pain. When you see it, I want you to actually don't chase the smoke, don't chase the stuff that seems to be what they're bringing up, and instead get down to what I call the starved stuff, the real fire. I teach that there's 7 basic needs that need to be met. Safety has to be there. Anytime somebody's fighting with you or bringing up a point about how they don't like that neighborhood, or they don't like the street there, or they don't like the river behind their house. My wife and I, we found the best house ever. Oh, I loved it. I wish we had gotten it. And my wife had a really weird complaint about it because it had a stream that ran behind the house. It was so beautiful, a beautiful stream. And my wife's like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't want a stream. That seems crazy to me. I don't want my kid to drown. And I think we had like 1 baby. And I'm like, well, no, the baby's not going to drown, honey, because we're not going to let the baby drown. I thought it was kind of dumb. Like, why are you blowing up this house because of a stream? So we actually would argue about it as we were trying to look at buying the house. And I'm like, well, she's like, I guess we could put a fence around it. And I'm like, a fence around the stream? Well, why would you want a stream if you're going to fence it out? That's crazy. So now we're fighting about fences and streams and the baby drowning. And then, well, don't you remember last year someone drowned in the river up the mountain? And I'm like, oh, geez. Well, we're not even related to them. They're not even. So I start fighting about it. And none of it's the real issue. But deep down, her real issue is she didn't feel safe. And I teach you got to feel safe 5 different ways. Physically safe, socially safe, emotionally safe, spiritually safe, so we have the same values, and financially safe. Physical, social, emotional, spiritual, financial. Anybody that's fighting about money with you, it's a safety issue, period. Anybody that's fighting with you about how embarrassing it is of something you just said, it's a social issue. If anybody doesn't ever tell you what they really feel, it's probably an emotional safety issue. If anybody questioned your values and your character, it's probably a spiritual safety issue. Make sense? And I found fastest way to cut through all of this is to pay attention, not to the smoke, but to see the smoke as a sign to something deeper. Another basic need is trust. We got to trust each other. I got to trust you. You got to trust me. Another need is appreciation. Everybody wants to be appreciated differently. I prefer to have somebody tell me something because I love to hear what they're saying. Others don't prefer to hear it. Some would rather have a text. Some don't want a text. They want an award, right? Some want an email. Some want an announcement over a loudspeaker. Some don't want any of that. They just want money. Everybody feels appreciated differently. So whenever you're struggling with somebody, I'm going to bet it's a safety, trust, or an appreciation issue. Or they may feel disrespected. Imagine the husband that comes into a house and you tell him the price is $60,000 higher than what he wanted to pay. And in his head, his wife, he's thinking, I can't afford the number I gave you. And now you're giving me even a more expensive house. Maybe the spouse is saying, oh, honey, it's so amazing. You'll be able to do it. Well, whatever. It might actually be a respect issue because he may not feel like anyone's listening to him. She may not feel like it's not fighting about a promotion that made her mad at the office. It's that she doesn't feel respected by the people around her. Safety, trust, appreciation, respect. V stands for validation. We need to feel like we're valid in our lives. If you want to have power with people in the space, they've got to feel valid in the space with you. If you're the only one that knows anything about a house, then they're not going to give you much space. So we got to make them feel valid. We've got to encourage them. You've all had a situation where you put an offer in on a house and it didn't work. It was too low and you lost the house. You got to be there to encourage them. And last but not least is dedication. They've got to feel that as an agent and a human being, you're more dedicated to them than any other person, place, or thing. And when you have those needs met, your partner feels healthy and loved. Really, what I call that stuff is love. In a marriage, that would be love. In a workplace, that would be, honor. But when we don't have it, we start to feel starved. One of the most basic rules I teach is that starved people starve people. So if you have somebody, and I promise you, in every single space that you work with somebody, you can start to detect the smoke and the fire, and you can start to put those fires out. And the faster you put the fire out, the faster they're going to feel that you add value to their life. The most valuable thing we can all do for each other is feed each other. Don't feed baloney, but feed my basic needs. And when you feed my basic needs, then I know as a fellow human to another human, I know that you are safe with me. I know that you are somebody that I want around me for a long time. And see if that doesn't resonate true in your heart. Do you know what it feels like to be fed by somebody? I'm going to bet that person that changed your life in such a dramatic way, I'm going to bet they fed you, didn't they? And because they fed you, you're loyal to them forever. Those are the 7 needs, and that's what we teach. By the way, when those needs are met, there's signs that are shown from it, okay? They're called vital signs, and I talk about it in depth in the online program, but the signs I look for are these. Anytime I see negative emotion, so that's anger, that's quiet, that's embarrassed, that's sad, that's somebody that's trying to withdraw and be alone, or somebody that's aggressive and attacking, somebody that's frozen and doesn't know what to do. Anytime I see negative emotions, I want you to stop talking. That's what I teach. Quit pushing on the other person. Stop and first recognize the emotion, because those signs are telling you there's a starved issue. Anytime you see misunderstanding, if your conversation gets more and more confusing, that's misunderstanding. You should not be talking in a way that's more and more confusing. It should get clearer and clearer as we go. Anytime you see confusion, you need to watch out. And anytime you see trust dropping, watch out. So stop. If you're negotiating with somebody and there's negative emotion, misunderstanding, or mistrust, stop pushing. And instead, what I want you to do is know when to go. The only time you're free to go and push your agenda is when you see positive emotion. If you want to keep pushing your agenda when there's negative emotion, you're going to pay the price, period. There's no way around it. You're going to suffer if you keep pushing your agenda on me when I'm showing you bad vital signs. And I learned all of this, by the way, as an EMT on an ambulance when I was in college. For about 2.5 years, I worked with people on an ambulance. And every time I would show up, I'd always check their vitals. And I wouldn't even know exactly what to do with them until I checked their vitals. So each of us needs to actually read people more as we go, right? Anytime I see positive emotion and we clear understanding, we're on the same page, and we trust each other, then feel free to say anything you want to say. Anytime you see the negative emotions, shut your cake hole, stop, and get real and start paying attention. And that's what I teach. Start to notice the emotion, recognize it, explore it, attend, and then lift the conversation. Recognize, explore, attend, lift. recognize, explore, attend, lift. And I will drill that in your head as we go through the Real Communications, Real Results coaching program. Also, real understanding leads to real results. And what I mean, this is the real model around the smoke and fire. There's the 4 steps you see there. I always recognize their emotion. Notice, by the way, not my emotion necessarily, their emotion, their story, explore their story, their starved stuff, and then I lift the conversation. I'm not going to try to lead the conversation until I have first recognized, explored, and attended to where they're hurting. Does that make sense? See how much more power it gives you when you decide to actually engage in your side of the conversation, but you're going to first make sure they're in the right space to receive your information. And by you having got their emotion recognized and you get them sharing it, that will start to lower their emotion and increase your understanding. It is the most powerful thing I've ever seen. By the way, I do it every day, about 20 times a day. Whether it's my wife when she's frustrated with me or the kids, or a client, or somebody on the radio with my radio show, or any of these things. It's a very basic model, but it is so profound. And I promise it is what adds value to people, because they recognize that you're willing to put them 3 times before you put yourself. You're willing to explore their emotion, their story, and their deepest pains or issues before you're willing to talk. It's brilliant leadership 101. Another thing we teach you throughout the program is called turning on the lights of learning. And it's one of my favorite concepts. I learned it actually hearing about stories on 9/11. And what I have believed my entire life is that every human being is somewhat wired to have their own learning and self-correcting system on board. Okay? We have learned through a variety of, I'll show you, abilities that are uniquely human. You know, the rest of the animal kingdom may not actualize all of these traits, but humans can. And if we turn on these lights, it is the key to actually taking our life to a higher level. So this is where we work on how to change and how to grow and how to develop and change. This quote by Albert Einstein I love: "You cannot attempt to solve a problem you created at the same level of thinking you were at when you created it." Albert Einstein teaches us that every one of us, if we want to solve our problems of today, we have to somehow elevate our thinking. So what I learned yesterday will not be good enough for my problems today. We need to elevate. So I teach that there's some lights that we lead, and this will be a big part of the class, that we use to grow, okay? And the 4 lights, I call them, are very simply, I believe everybody has self-awareness. So if I will pay attention to how I just handle the situation, and what you could do is literally after an argument, after a mistake, after you've just sold a house, you could sit down and go through the 4 lights. The first light is awareness and self-awareness. I want you to be aware of how you influence the deal. What part of the problem of the deal were you? What part of the success of the deal were you? Don't take more success than you should. Don't take less than you should. Where really were you? And I want you to exercise more self-awareness. I also want you to exercise more empathy and compassion. So when you have a situation where somebody you're working with is talking to you about a struggle they're having, I want you to identify what were their needs and wants in the struggle. When you're sitting there and a family is really struggling with which house to buy, instead of being frustrated by it, try to see if you could empathize by just asking yourself, what are their struggles? What are their needs and wants here? What is it like to be them? A couple buying their first house, putting all the money they've saved down, and it's not everything they wanted. And see if it doesn't influence you. So self-awareness and empathy are 2 of those lights. And every human being has both of them. They're at our disposal. We have learned that even just monkeys, rhesus monkeys, if a rhesus monkey watches another monkey being harmed, the rhesus monkey has as do humans, we have mirror neurons. So in my brain, if I'm watching another human being harmed, my brain actually goes to my empathy pain region, the exact same pain region as the person being harmed, where their brain would go. Because we're wired to connect to each other. We're wired to understand each other's pain. And I promise you, if you are the agent that understands my pain and can show me you get it, then guess what you've got with me? You've got my heart, you got my money, you got my referrals, you got everything. Because I get that you're empathic and that you're self-aware. The third light is called vision. Vision is our light that we all have about what I want and what you want. And we both, a lot of times, we want the same thing. So the vision question is, what are our shared wants and needs here? So instead of always fighting from your position or another's position, what do we both want here in this marriage? What do we both want here in this real estate deal? What do we both want in this brokerage? What do we want here? And then we start to use our ability to have a vision to create this really cool opportunity of what we can create together. And we'll show you how to unlatch that really cool gift. And then the very last light I teach you to turn on is the light called conscience. Conscience, by definition, is two words, right? Con, which means with, and science, which means knowledge. When people make a decision with their conscience, they're making a decision with knowledge. And it's really their knowledge of what's good or bad, what's right or wrong for them. And conscience is where every single day, if we go through our four lights, after every serious success and every serious failure, I try to go through these four lights. After every success, I ask, what part of the solution there was I? What part of the problem was I? What were their needs and wants? Everyone else's needs and wants in the situation. What do we want most together? And the last question I ask is the conscience question. What's the most important thing I could do today to become the change I need to become? Or you could ask the one question, right? Like the book, The One Thing. What's the one thing I could do today that would help me be even better at this situation next time? And go create a goal. And that becomes your one thing. So that's how we turn on the lights. And the lights are very simply going to then need to be implemented back when we talk about our character. We use the lights to create change and foster growth. We use the character to create mutual trust. We use communication to enable mutual understanding. We use cooperation with other human beings to really enhance our ability to get mutual benefit. And we use change and growth and the four lights to ensure that we are constantly growing with the people around us. That I'm not just growing by myself, but I am intentionally trying to grow other people. I love nothing more than referring books that I have read to other people that I love, because then I've noticed if I refer the book to them and they go get good at it, then we can become even more together. And that's what I think each and every one of you are. I think you are change agents, you're learning agents. You would not be on a webinar in the middle of the day to learn about real communication, real results, if you didn't want a better life. So you're already here. I would love to have more time to help you to actually make this space between you and other people become even greater. The coolest thing I've ever seen is that everything you're going to learn in the real communication class is going to be totally, fully applicable to your marriage, to your relationships, to your most important team building experiences, to your job as a manager, to your job as an agent. Anywhere there's a human being, this program is going to help you actually finally start to get closer between what your ideal self is and your real self is. And it is the most powerful thing I do. In fact, I'm in my own life, I'm trying to quit a lot of other things that aren't half as important as what I'm teaching you now, because I want to be able to influence more of you. So please come join that class. We'll be starting it soon. And there is, I know, a code, and I'll actually let Paige explain everything. But when you register, we'll give you 20% off. Today's the last day to register for the class. But get in, folks. Let's get in and let's go make a change. Throughout the program, we'll laugh a lot. I'll have a full slideshow for you that you can use and download and take advantage of. So thank you so much. You remember, you become the change, just like Gandhi says. You become the change you seek in others. And when you do, guess what? You will elevate everyone around you, and elevating everyone around you only elevates yourself. So thank you so much for being with me. I look forward to getting to know you more at all of the other events around the country, and also look forward to spending some time with you in the Real Communications, Real Results class. Paige, back to you.
We had a switch out, Matt, so it's now Ben. But
there you go, Ben.
Yeah, so just to notify everyone, the next program for Real Communication, Real Results starts Wednesday, March 14th, and that code to get 20% off of the registration price is FR 2018. That is FR 2018. That will get you 20% off of the original price, and the program starts on Wednesday, March the 14th. Thank you so much for joining, and hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Matt.